You can use your body's own regenerative abilities to turn back the clock. It's a concept called autojuvenation, and there are 5 things really that if you do really focus on that, you can look 5 to 10 years younger.
Guess my age.
27?
Oh my gosh. I feel like I have so much advantage in the business space because I look younger.
There are so many people who do find that when they look in the mirror and they feel better about themselves, that can really impact their job performance.
You are a huge TikTok star, so over 8 million followers. How can we leverage social media without it being about what we look like?
What it comes down to is
Anthony, welcome to Young and Profiting Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Hala. I appreciate it.
I am so looking forward to this conversation. I am a skincare fanatic. So I love talking about skincare. This podcast is Young and Profiting, so we want to look as young as possible for as long as possible. So you are the perfect guest to have on the show. And so I really want to focus this episode on 2 main parts. Number 1 is your career and your career journey as a holistic plastic surgeon, how you got there, some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. And then I want to talk about how we can look and feel our best, how we can be younger for life.
Sounds great.
Okay, so I loved learning how you first got interested in plastic surgery. And I did find out that in your teenage years, you had a very personal experience with a major plastic surgery makeover. So tell us about what you were like in your teens and what that experience was like for you.
Yeah, Hala. So thank you. I was I grew up in a small town in the middle of Michigan. We were the only Asian family. So my parents immigrated from Korea. My dad's a physician. He's an obstetrician gynecologist. And basically, I developed, and I think it was honestly a mutation because there's nobody in my family that's ever had this before. But when I got into high school, my jaw started growing. And growing and growing, and it wouldn't stop growing to the point where I graduated high school and my jaw stuck out so much that I could stick my tongue through the gap between my bottom and my front teeth. My jaw stuck out that far.
Wow.
And so I ended up having orthognathic kind of a plastic reconstructive surgery where they broke my jaw, set it back, they wired it shut for 6 weeks, and that profoundly changed how I looked. And in the end, how I felt about myself. And so that really was the starting point for me of my journey into realizing that making changes to your appearance can really profoundly impact your self-esteem, your self-identity, how you carry yourself. And that set me on the path to going into the field of plastic surgery.
How do you feel that surgery impacted your future career-wise? Like, do you think you would be as successful as you are today had you not have gotten that procedure?
No, because people would walk into my office, they would see me and go, well, if he didn't get anything done, why should I get something done? And they would leave. So, I mean, it's an unfortunate statement on society. I mean, I joke about that, but there is truth to it in that how you look, especially as a plastic surgeon, does make a difference in how your patients, look at you. And even if they decide to choose you as their doctor. Now, that being said, being a male plastic surgeon is very different than being a female plastic surgeon. I go to my meetings and you see plastic surgeons who are in their 60s and 70s. They've had male docs who've had nothing done. They look kind of dumpy. They may be wearing really baggy, loose clothing, and they've got tennis shoes on with suits. And then you see their wives who sometimes are younger than them, who are very well made up. You see female plastic surgeons, they don't show up looking like that. It's an unfortunate statement on society where men can let themselves go to an extent and people overlook it in a very different way than if that happens to a woman. So
totally.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other, subject.
That's a whole other conversation. But it's so true. It's like women are judged so much harder, whereas men, you're like, oh, he must be like really smart, and I want this smart guy to do my surgery. I don't care what he looks like.
Exactly. I mean, I see some of the plastic surgeons I trained under, and you just wonder, like, why don't you do some of your own medicine, Because, man, but it's just how the way the world is right now. So,
totally.
So yeah, I mean, so for me, having that operation did really change how I looked at myself. And so now, I've dedicated my life to helping people to feel good about themselves, but using invasive procedures like that only as a last resort.
Yeah, I can't wait to pick your brain about holistic plastic surgery, what that all means. But first, you are a huge TikTok star. So over 8 million followers. You've got over 1 million followers on Instagram. You've done such an incredible job. At what point in your career were you like, okay, like I'm going to just like embrace social media and make it a priority?
So my career has undergone a lot of different changes. So when I first started my practice, I basically moved to Michigan. I did a fellowship actually out in Beverly Hills, which is like an apprenticeship. So I worked under one of the top plastic surgeons out there. And he actually offered me a job and said, hey, stay here. We're in Beverly Hills. It's one of the top practices here. Join me and we're going to take over the city. And honestly, it was quite enticing. I mean, you look at such a great place to operate. You got celebrities coming in all the time, but the thing that I felt that I didn't like was it really wasn't me. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest, and honestly, Beverly Hills plastic surgery was just all about the money. And for me, I felt that there was more to it than that. And so I ended up moving back to Michigan. I started up my own practice in the outskirts of Detroit, suburbs of Detroit, where my wife's parents live. And my practice did not do well initially. I had no patients. And then all of a sudden, when I was out in Beverly Hills, we filmed an episode of Dr. 90210 back then. Now, Dr. 90210, you may be too young to remember this, but this was one of the first plastic surgery reality shows. It was on the E! Network. And every episode that aired, they would re-air it literally like hundreds of times. And this was back before you were doing a lot on social media and stuff. And so my practice started. I had no patients. Then this episode airs. I'm literally in it for 2 minutes where they introduce me and then I leave. And the doctor, though, in that literally 2 minutes I'm in, said that he's moving to Rochester, Michigan. I made him an offer he couldn't refuse, and he refused it. And the next day after that episode aired, my practice exploded. And that buoyed my practice for years. And so then I parlayed that appearance on Dr. 90210, literally 2 minutes, into eventually doing a lot of national television shows like The Rachel Ray Show, Dr. Oz, The Doctors. I was on those shows, some of them dozens of times. But kind of like an actor who starts realizing that the roles are going to younger, better looking people at some point. I reached that point where the producers weren't calling me as much. They were picking other doctors who were, once again, younger and better looking than me. And I realized I had to pivot because that was drying up. And that's when I started looking at social media.
Yeah, this is such a great segue into my next question, because I was about to say, I teach social media. So I teach people how to grow on LinkedIn. I'm a big LinkedIn influencer. Yep. And one of the biggest pushbacks that I get is that they're like, well, Hala, like you're like a pretty girl. Of course you have social media followers, but like, what about if we're not attractive? And I always tell them it has nothing to do with what you look like. So Anthony, you're an attractive guy, but you're not Bella Hadid, right? And I'm not Bella Hadid either. So talk to us about why it doesn't really matter about your looks, and especially when you are owning a business or you have a professional service. How can we leverage social media without it being about what we look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, I am 51 years old, and I know that there are a lot of better looking, more muscular plastic surgeons who are on social media than I am. Yet, why do I have more followers than any other plastic surgeon in the country? It's crazy. Like, I'm in Detroit, for God's sakes, And really, I think what it comes down to is when the pandemic hit. So I started focusing on social media probably back in 2017, 2018. And I was doing Facebook and Twitter and that stuff. And it was doing okay. But it wasn't until 2019 and then 2020 when the pandemic hit, I was one of the first OG kind of influencers, physicians on TikTok. The pandemic hits, everybody's at home, and my practice closed for 2.5 months. Now, at the time, I had no idea how long it was going to be closed for. I mean, it was a crazy, scary time for so many of us. And I realized at that point that I needed to do something to help people. I volunteered at my local hospital if they needed me, but God forbid, if it's a pandemic and you need a plastic surgeon to come in to treat your patients, like it's got to be like the end of the world type of situation. So thank God we didn't get to that point. But I want to do something to help people. And I realized that I don't, I don't have to put stuff out there to ask patients, to try to get patients to come in my office because it was closed. So I just started creating content that for me, I thought was fun, that was entertaining, that was interesting, that was maybe educational, but not always, but that could even just help people pull themselves out of that horrible, crazy, scary time for
Mm.
10 seconds, 20 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever it was. That's what I ended up trying to create. And that was when everything exploded. It was when I stopped worrying about being a quote unquote plastic surgeon that
Mm.
everything really exploded for me. And I think part of it was that people saw, number one, I'm doing my own social media. Like the posts weren't made by,
Mm.
somebody else. They were made by me. Like it was obviously me doing it. And then number two, I wasn't worried about having to say certain things, say things the right way. I don't curse much, but every once in a while you throw something like that in if that's really natural to you. And that's really when things, did really well.
Yeah, I love it that you infuse humor into your content. So like you have this like fake feud with I think your best friend Dr. Lee, which I just always think is like so hilarious when you do those posts.
Thank
So
you.
talk to us about the importance of infusing humor along with educating because I know a lot of people are learning from you too, but they're also laughing with you.
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to is you have to look at it as edutainment. So anybody can follow 50 other plastic surgeons who will talk about where the scars go if you're going to get a tummy tuck, or what are the risks of having a facelift surgery. And it gets boring after a while. So really,
Mhm.
I think if you're looking at it as a true creator, and I think there's a difference between being a content creator and a physician who has an Instagram account. There's a
Mm.
huge difference there. The way I
Mhm.
look at it is that I'm a content creator. I'm creating content, and it is a creative process. It's not here are my before and after photos, or hey, let me read basically a blog article that I wrote. It's no, like let me create content that's going to cause you to be entertained, that's going to actually draw you in, and that maybe, yeah, you can learn a little bit from. But honestly, sometimes the learning aspect of it is secondary to just engaging with somebody. And
Mm.
so I think that really is key is number one, looking at yourself as a content creator, not as a business person who has an Instagram account or a TikTok
Mm.
account. Do you
Yeah.
see there's that difference there?
Totally. I love that advice. And I'd love to get like a behind the scenes look at what has, becoming you're a huge influencer. Like you're competing
You're
with
too kind.
huge celebrity. It's true though. 8 million followers on TikTok is nothing to sneeze on. Like you are literally competing with top celebrities. How has that actually impacted the finances of your business? Like have you been able to charge more? Do you just have like a
Mhm.
waiting list of clients? Like how has that impacted your business?
So the way I look at everything is we're looking at it from a multiple streams of income. And looking at it as trying to develop streams of income that are passive, which you have been great at teaching your followers about. And so, yes, when you look at the streams of income that I have for myself personally, I've got my own medical practice. So I still operate 2 days a week. I have a full-time medical practice. So that's one stream of income. I also have extenders, which are like physician assistants, nurses, estheticians. So that's another stream of income for my practice. I have a stream of income then for social media. I get paid by certain social media companies like YouTube and TikTok. Instagram literally pays me $20 a month. It's crazy. That's all they pay. But and that's not as much as it used to be. I mean, at one time it was a lot more than that. But I also have my own skincare company, and I do brand deals. So the brand deals have become a big part of it. So where let's say the social media companies maybe don't pay like they used to, like TikTok, I make up for that with the sponsored posts that I do. And I
Mm.
turn down a lot more than I say yes to. And so then I have, like I said, my own skincare line called Youn Beauty. We have skincare and supplements. That's a big part of another mode of income that we have, stream of income. And those are kind of the main
Yeah.
things that I can think of just offhand. And so it's kind of looking at it, for me as a physician, it's saying, hey, when most physicians, they look and we go to our meetings and they talk about, you have your practice consultants and you know what they talk about? They talk about how do you convert more patients to have surgery? How do you get more patients in the door? I mean, Hala, I've got a 2-year waiting list. Like I don't want more patients necessarily
Mm.
calling me. I don't need that because it's already a huge waiting list. Then how do I impact people and help people? And then at the same time, profit myself off of that.
Yeah. So good. It's so inspiring. I'm sure there's so many people out there that are doctors, lawyers, even like accountants. They've got professional services. And it's like you can parlay your experience into an online brand and then monetize that online brand and have multiple revenue streams, like you mentioned. So I didn't hear you say that you're monetizing your podcast. And you are speaking to the podcast princess. So if you need support monetizing your podcast, let's definitely talk about it.
We are working on that. So yeah, what happened is I had my book come out in January, Younger for Life, and I've had a podcast for many years, but honestly, when my YouTube and all my video stuff exploded, I kind of put the podcast a little bit on the back burner. I still kind of did it here and there and stuff, and then once my book came out, I started really looking at what media in general, what was going on with the whole media landscape in general. And I realized that I really need to refocus on the podcast because, there's so many people that are listening. I listen so much. It's just for years, I thought that maybe I could do better with the video stuff. But now that the video stuff is doing so well, it's like, hey, you know what? I've got a little bit of extra time. Let me focus more on the podcast. So we are looking now at monetizing it. It's been growing. It's back to much better than even where it was before I started taking time off of it. And that's a really exciting thing.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about that later on. Okay, so you just mentioned time. You've got some time. A lot of business owners who want to grow a personal brand online, they're like, well, I don't have time for that. I'm not an influencer. I'm an entrepreneur. Talk to me about how you actually make time for your content while balancing being an author, a podcaster, a doctor.
Yeah. So I think that you have to look at it as these are things that you need to love to do. So for example, for me, I operate every Tuesday and Thursday. I see patients every Monday and Wednesday. And I used to operate Friday mornings. I mean, technically, when I started my practice, I used to operate all day Fridays. And gradually, I brought that down to the point where I was just operating a few hours in the morning and then doing podcasting and social media and video creation and writing books and all that stuff after that. And then I realized in the end, I said, if I get up an hour earlier on Thursday, that can kind of make up for some lost time on, the time I'm operating on Friday. I'll just do a little bit more on a Thursday. And now I dedicate all my Fridays to essentially podcasting and content creation. And then at the same time, what I'm finding is that as I'm doing more and more of the social media and the podcasting and the YouTube and all that type of stuff, I'm able to charge more for my surgeries. I don't take insurance anymore, and so I can really charge what I want. And that has allowed me to operate less, yet still make the same or more than I did when I operated an extra day. And now I spend that extra day doing other things. I still love treating patients. I love operating, but I also love a variety. And I would be, if I was one of those physicians that saw 60 patients a day, 5 days a week, year after year after year, I would burn out. It's just not my thing. I love doing a lot of different things, especially the creative stuff. And so that's allowed me to essentially add the creative parts in and actually in the end make more money by doing that.
Yeah. This is so great because I feel like a lot of people that are tuning in, they probably feel like handcuffed to their great, professional services job. But you show that you can kind of explore being creative, being a content creator, writing, podcasting, teaching others, and do stuff outside, what you went to school for 10, 20 years.
Yeah. And I think the first thing you want to do is, and I think there's so many, the issue that people have, I think, is that there are so many bright lights out there. There's so many things that you can focus on. And people then, they get inspired by listening to, say, one of, a podcast. And they say, well, geez, I want to get on, I want to get on YouTube. I want to start my podcast. Do one thing that you think you're going to really love. If you're going to get into this, focus on that, do that really, really well. And then when that's successful, then start moving into the other things. Because I think what happens to a lot of entrepreneurs, especially like a physician, is that they see all these bright, shiny objects. They go after all of them at one time. They do all of them not so well or half-assed all of them. And then none of them really become successful. Then they get dejected. And so my recommendation really for people who are thinking about going into something a little bit different is to think about what you like to do. And my first love was always video. And that's why I focus on that. Even though I've written 4 books and I've got the podcast, it always was the video. And then once you really do that well and you're really enjoying it, if you want to branch out, by all means do that. But you don't want to be kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. You want to start with that one thing that you're going to love, that you can really excel at, and then try to work your way out from there.
Totally. And it's so important with all these platforms. They all have different features and you got to learn the algorithms, and you just have to figure out how you can get leverage and grow on one platform and focus there. And that's a lot of hard work unless you have unlimited amounts of money and you can hire people. But to your point, you did everything yourself, and that comes off so authentically, especially for your first main channel. It's like so important, I think, to do it yourself.
Totally agree. And I think too, as a physician and as a creator, you want to look at, it's very important, look at whether you are a B2B person or a B2C person. So for example, I'm very B2C. I don't get a lot of, I have some plastic surgeons that follow me. I think they don't comment on my stuff because I think that, I'm kind of a bit of an outlier. And there's some doctors who don't like me, some of them who are jealous of me. But I have a good friend of mine, and he is a B2B doctor where he has all the plastic surgeons and nurses following him. They comment on his stuff all the time. But he doesn't have any, he has literally 1/8, I think, of the followers that I have. But we create very different content. And so, when you're looking as a physician or a professional, you're creating content, the first thing I encourage you to think about is, are you a B2B person or are you a B2C person? And really focus, once you figure which one of those out, then you want to create content for that person. None of my content is B2B. You don't see me creating any content for doctors. It's all for patients, lay people, maybe nurses, maybe support staff, but almost none of it is for doctors. And I know now if I put something out that's specifically for doctors, it's going to crash and burn because it's such a small fraction of my audience.
I love that, B2B versus B2C. I always say like niche versus broad, but I really love like the way that you put it, B2B versus B2C. Okay, so let's talk about holistic medicine. You call yourself a holistic plastic surgeon. How does that differ from traditional cosmetic procedures?
Yeah, so this is a great question. It's something that I came up with many years ago as I kind of hit this fork in the road with my practice. As plastic surgeons, we learn how to cut people open, and the goal is always to bring people to surgery. And I realized when I had a patient with a terrible complication that this was wrong, and that my goal for being a plastic surgeon should not be to try to bring as many people to surgery as I can, but it should be, how do I keep them out of surgery, yet still help them to look and feel their best? And so I created in my book, Younger for Life, the idea is it's a concept called autojuvenation. And it's basically how you can use your body's own natural rejuvenative abilities to turn back the clock naturally. But in order to do that, you have to give it the right tools and the right environment to do so. And I firmly believe that if you incorporate those types of things, and it's what you eat, when you eat, nutritional supplements, skincare, and non-invasive treatments. When you focus on those 5 things, the vast majority of people can look 5, even up to 10 years younger, and hopefully not feel the need to have surgery. Because Hala, if anybody comes to see me and they say, hey, Dr. Youn, I'm thinking of having a tummy tuck or a facelift or breast lift, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? I answer, you can die. I mean, that's the worst thing because you got to be honest with them. And so anything you can do to prevent that, obviously you want to do.
So, Anthony, I'd love for you to guess my age. I never share my age, ever. I never share my age. And I'd love for you to guess my age.
27?
Oh my gosh. I'm 38.
Oh, look at you. Oh my gosh.
I really know how to stay looking young. So I never announce my age, guys, because I really get away with looking really young.
Yeah, you do. Well, but with what you're doing, it's good for people to know that you're 38 because I think that with age does come wisdom, and people believe that you have more wisdom if you're older too, whether that's true or not. I mean, I know people who are 50 who God knows they have no wisdom.
That's totally. Young and Profiters, you know me. I love a great deal just as much as the next person. But I'm not going to cut coupons or collect loyalty cards just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. So when Mint Mobile told me it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I didn't believe them, but turns out it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. And Mint Mobile made it so simple for me to switch. Everything was online. It was easy to purchase, easy to activate, easy to save money. The longest part of the process was the time I spent on hold waiting to break up with my old provider. Well, good riddance to them because I'm saving so much money with Mint Mobile, and the quality of the phone service is just as good as my previous provider. It's high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can keep your current phone and your current phone number, so there's nothing to lose. I know for a fact that if you're not using Mint Mobile, you are definitely not paying anywhere close to $15 a month for your phone plan. Why not check it out? Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. Go to mintmobile.com/profiting. That's mintmobile.com/profiting to cut your wireless bill down to just $15 a month. That's mintmobile.com/profiting. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 GB on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. I think I have a lot to offer in terms of the skincare conversation, so I can't wait to really get into it.
Sure.
So first, let's talk about what is the difference between anti-aging and reverse aging, because those are two different things.
Yeah, so anti-aging basically means slowing down that aging process because no matter what, it's going to keep moving forward. Reversing aging is actually looking or being younger. Now, there's interesting things, okay? There's a difference between a biological age and a chronological age, okay? So you cannot change your chronological age. You said 38?
Yep.
All right, I'm 51. There's no way I can be chronologically 50. Like that ship has passed last year. You can't be 37. That's what you were last year. But your biological age is basically the age of your body biologically on the inside, and that you can change. And those are those principles of autojuvenation by, changing what you eat, by exercising, by taking certain supplements. All that stuff can actually reverse your biological age. Now, how much can you reverse it by? That's a big question. And there are people who claim to have a biological age nowhere near their chronological age. You got to wonder, there's some people who use that as a marketing tactic as well.
I know who you're talking about.
But I think that the fact is that you can look at somebody on the outside and have an idea of what their biological age is, because what is on the inside will show on your skin. The skin is our magic mirror. I have a good friend of mine, Dr. Trevor Cates. She said, our skin is our magic mirror. It is what's on the inside will show on your skin. The interesting thing is that, and this is where my book is a little bit different than some of the other kind of anti-aging books by certain scientists, is that there are people who will talk about different things you can do to anti-age your body and increase longevity, but a lot of them don't honestly look that young. And there are studies that show that the younger you look, technically, the longer you will live. And there are actually twin studies that show that the identical twins, that the younger looking of the identical twin typically lives longer than the older looking of the two.
Wow.
Yeah, even though genetically they're the same.
That's so interesting. So I have a funny story about this. So Dave Asprey, who's coming on my show again in a couple weeks.
I love Dave. Dave's a friend of mine.
Dave's awesome. So Dave came on my show a couple years ago. And I remember when he came on the show, he was like 48. And so I was like, Dave, you're 48 years old. You say you're going to live to 180. And he cut me off. And he was like, Hala, that's ageist. He's like, I don't align with being 48. He was offended that I called him 48 years old. And he's like, I am 27% of my goal of being 180 years old. I'm 27% years old. And I always thought of that whenever I thought about my age. I was like, man, I don't feel 38. I feel like I'm 25% of my goal. So I feel with AI and all the advances in medicine and everything going on, I really truly feel that people are going to start looking so much younger. It's already happening. 30-year-olds look nothing like they used to. I remember seeing 30-year-olds and they looked so much older than what 30 and 40-year-olds look like now. Yeah. And I just feel like people are going to really start coming forward with their biological age versus their chronological age. Medically, I'm actually this age. And I just feel like that's going to really be the future, because right now I feel like sometimes I look really young. I go out and I feel like I look much younger than other 20-year-olds who aren't working out and eating healthy. I literally look younger than them.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that part of it is, I think this generation are the millennials. They take care of themselves so much better. I mean, one of the shows I grew up watching was The Golden Girls. And I'm sure you've seen those memes on social media where you see Rue McClanahan from The Golden Girls, where she was 53, and then J-Lo, who's the same age. Yeah. And it's insane when you think about it. And J-Lo, as much as I personally, and I'm not her doctor, so I have no evidence of any of this, I don't think it's just olive oil of why she looks so young, but I also don't think it's all plastic surgery. This is a woman who has taken great, whether you love her or not, or dislike her, she's taken great care of herself. She exercises regularly. She watches what she eats. I'm sure she uses great skincare. She protects her skin, and that can really make a difference. There are genetics, though. Genetics do play a factor in it, but we believe that's only about 20%. It's that 80-20 rule, and that 20% of your aging will be determined by your genetics. The other 80% is what you do with them, is the epigenetics part of it. And then there's some
Mm.
people who benefit a lot from that. I think the 80-20 rule is pretty generalized. If you are really light skinned, you're, let's say, Irish, that's going to be more than probably 20%, unfortunately, for you. Same thing, like if you are African American or even Asian, it's like we do get the benefit because of the melanin in our skin of maybe being more than that 20% genetics, having us age a bit more slowly than somebody who, once again, with somebody who's Irish, where that's on the other side of it. So it's interesting, but definitely what you see on the outside does project what's on the inside. Not 100%, but a good portion of it.
Is it possible that if your insides are aging faster, that you actually look older than your age? Like, can you explain to us, like, what are some of the signs that your insides might not be as healthy as they should be?
Yeah, so some very simple thing that we know of is that the health of our gut, our microbiome, will really show on the skin. And there are early studies now showing that if you've got, let's say, poor gut health, if your microbiome is unhealthy, if you're eating a lot of inflammatory type foods, then that will show on your skin as inflamed skin. So there are connections between skin conditions like rosacea, like eczema, even acne, that do have a connection to the health of the gut. And so anybody who's truly looking at skincare and skin health from a truly holistic perspective needs to do more than, unfortunately, what some of us have been doing for the last 50 years, which is just focusing on sunblock and creams. Yes, that is an important part of it, but also the health of your gut is really going to show in that manner. And we have direct correlations and studies now showing that.
So let's step back a minute. Let's talk about your career journey a bit, because you started as a traditional plastic surgeon. So how did you then switch gears to be like, okay, like I just want to reset here and focus more on holistic? What really reset you?
So I had this patient who I performed a facelift on. And, at this point in my career, I was probably, 7, 8, 10 years into my career. And I thought that I'd hit the pinnacle of success. I had over a year waiting list. I had patients flying in from all over the country to have operations done by me. And, in surgery, there's certain operations that we look at and we take pride in because we're able to do them. And they're typically the more difficult operations where the patients are very choosy on who does their surgery. So for example, if you're a general surgeon, that operation is the Whipple. The Whipple is like a 10-hour pancreatic cancer operation that when you're in your training, if you're so lucky to see a Whipple, you're very fortunate. And those types of operations are only really done by the most experienced surgeons because they're so difficult. In plastic surgery, that operation is probably the facelift. You can go and find, there are surgeons who will do, patients who will pick almost anybody to do their lipo or even their BBL. But that if they're going to do a facelift on you, they're going to cut open and lift up your face and stuff, that they're going to be super choosy in their doctor. So Hala, for many years, I literally graded the success of my practice based off how many facelift patients I had on the schedule, as ridiculous as that may sound. And I had a patient who flew in to see me. She had a facelift done. The surgery went perfectly. And she developed some terrible complications afterwards. And it really got me into thinking, am I doing the right thing? And I hit this kind of rock bottom, and I started realizing what I mentioned earlier about the goal of my practice. And so I spent many, many months trying to really look at and rethink what I was doing. And I started reading books. For example, in my training as a plastic surgeon, I got almost no training on nutrition. I never spent a single day with a dermatologist learning about skin. We didn't get this type of thing. And so I realized that there was so much that I didn't know that I needed to learn. And I spent tens of thousands of hours basically reading books, studying, looking up studies, created my own supplement protocol for healing that since then has been pretty much co-opted by a lot of other companies. And I created this whole concept of autorejuvenation and holistic plastic surgery. And I read books from people who I'd not heard of until I really started digging deep into this. Books by like Dave Asprey. I read a couple of Dave Asprey's books. And all of these alternative and holistic experts, whether they're naturopaths, whether they're biohackers, whether they're dermatologists, I was able to get a little bit from each of them to really kind of come up with what I'm doing in my career now.
So interesting. And something that I want to call out for all of my listeners, some entrepreneurs, executives are listening in and they're like, well, what do I care about looking younger? And I have to say, I feel like I have so much advantage in the business space looking younger. I literally feel like I have 10 years extra than everybody else because I look younger. And that it's like such an advantage. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about like career wise. Why is it an important thing to try to look and feel your best?
Yeah, I mean, I think for my career being a plastic surgeon, if I walked in the room and I had huge bags under my eyes or something like that, then obviously that's going to impact how people feel about me, even though some of that may be subconsciously. But also, I think, I see a lot of people who come into my office who are executives, who are business people, who are entrepreneurs, and they are coming in to get little tweaks because they know that what they see in the mirror doesn't match how they feel on the inside. So we talked a little bit, a little bit about how what our inside is mirrored by what's on the outside. But there's only so much control you have over that. And you could be feeling great and be in great shape for somebody who's, let's say, 60 years old, but you're still going to have that aging. You can't, when you're 60, look like you're 35. It's just not possible unless you're a freak of nature. Okay. And there's very few people who are like that. But if you're like most people, if you are lucky, maybe you're going to look 5, 10 years younger. And that's great. But sometimes, no matter what you do, that's going to be a part of it. And so there are so many people who do find that when they look in the mirror and they feel better about themselves, that can really impact their job performance and how they look at themselves as a business person, as an entrepreneur. I've seen so many people in my practice, whether they have had surgery or not had surgery, whether they have, just done some of the things that I recommend, the autojuvenative ways to turn back the clock naturally, and it has profoundly impacted their life. In some ways that are somewhat indirect, it's just by feeling good about yourself, you're going to come across differently to other people. It's kind of like, one way I think about it is we all know how it feels when we go to a store and we buy a new outfit and we put that outfit on and we're still the same person, okay, on the inside, but wearing that outfit, we feel in some ways better about ourselves. There's just that kind of idea. And whether you're looking for jonesing for compliments or not, just the fact that we're wearing something new and we kind of like it, it makes us feel good. And that's what we should be feeling all the time about ourselves in general, and think about how you feel that way. You're going to project that, whether it is subtly, subconsciously projecting it or projecting it and knowing that you're projecting that.
Yeah. And I feel like it has nothing to do with like being extremely attractive.
No.
It's almost just about being your best version of yourself and looking fresh and not tired and things like that.
And I think it's healthy too. I think in the end, health is beauty. And you can, there are people who are in their 70s who have a lot of wrinkles, but they're healthy and they're beautiful and they project that way. A good example of that is Audrey Hepburn. She died, I think, when she was in her late 70s. And I mean, when she was at that age, she was still so beautiful. I don't think she had hardly any work done, but she was absolutely beautiful at that time.
I have to check out her pictures at 70 years old so I can have some motivation.
Yeah, she was one in Breakfast at Tiffany's, and as she aged, she just aged so gracefully. And like I said, I don't know if she's had a little work done. At that time, there wasn't a lot of work being done specifically, but she just looked great. And I think that we can project that. It doesn't have to necessarily just be about the wrinkles and stuff. It truly is about the health.
So speaking of that, you talked about autojuvenation. You threw that word out there. Can you define that for us?
So autojuvenation is how you can use your body's own regenerative abilities to turn back the clock. And it was those 5 things I mentioned earlier of what you eat, when you eat, nutritional supplements, skincare, and non-invasive treatments. And so these are the 5 things I focus on in my book, Younger for Life, because those are the 5 things really that if you do really focus on that, I strongly believe that virtually everybody can look 5 to 10 years younger. So what you eat is going to be eating an anti-inflammatory diet. You want to make sure you get sufficient amounts of healthy protein, cutting out the ultra-processed foods. I'm sure Dave's going to talk a lot about this type of stuff when he comes on. When you eat is going to be adding a little bit of intermittent fasting into it. One thing that we do know is if you want to age more slowly, the number one thing you can technically do is calorie restriction. But calorie restriction is no fun. And so another option would be to do intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. So basically just giving your body short periods of time, whether it's 12 hours, sometimes 16, where you give your gut a rest and you let your body's natural regenerative mechanisms work itself. It's called autophagy. I think that's important. And then supplements. I'm a big fan of supplements. Happy to talk about them if you'd like. skincare, and we can talk about a good skincare routine. And then non-invasive treatments. There's so much out there that's so exciting to turn back the clock without getting injected or getting cut on.
I'm going to pick your brain on all of this. So like you mentioned, you've got this book, Younger for Life. In it, you have a 2 minutes, 5 years younger skincare routine. Can you break that down for us?
Yes. So if you are like so many people and you are confused about what to do with your skin and you go to Sephora or Ulta and you're like, what do I buy? This is the basic thing that everybody should do. And if you do this, you're going to be way ahead of everybody else. Takes just 2 minutes a day. So you start in the morning, you cleanse your skin with a cleanser appropriate for your skin type. And so if you've got kind of drier, more mature skin, then going for a more milky or hydrating cleanser is important. If you've got more oily skin, if you're sometimes on the younger side, then a more foaming cleanser often is better for skin like that. After that, you want to apply a vitamin C or antioxidant serum. Vitamin C, you can find most skincare lines have it. We've got one called our CE antioxidant serum. But using a vitamin C serum in the morning is going to help protect your skin from free radicals. Free radicals are one of the main causes of our skin aging, and using vitamin C will help protect it from that, as well as help with blemishes and collagen production as well. And then the third thing in the morning is to apply a sunscreen. I do recommend at least SPF 30. If you're going to be inside, you have to wear it? Not necessarily, but definitely you're going to be out quite a bit, then sunscreen is helpful. That's all you have to do in the morning. Cleanse, vitamin C serum, and then a sunscreen. In the evening, gotta cleanse your skin. If you only wash your skin once a day, make sure it's in the evening because you gotta get rid of the day's worth of dirt and grime and pollution and oil and all that type of stuff, and definitely makeup. So wash your skin at night, and then you want to apply an anti-aging cream. The one I usually recommend as a starter is a retinol. Retinol is a form of vitamin A. Most big skincare companies have a retinol moisturizer. That's a cornerstone for our Youn Beauty line, our retinol moisturizer. Science shows that those are the most potent anti-aging creams out there if you don't have a prescription. Okay, so use a retinol at night. If you have real sensitive skin, if you've got real sensitive skin, then use bakuchiol. Bakuchiol is a plant-based alternative to retinol. Appears to work very similarly, but it's more easily tolerated. And technically, that's it. Maybe once or twice a week, exfoliate your skin with a nice, gentle exfoliating agent, whether it's an at-home peel or like a scrub. That's all you have to do. So really, that's the 2 minutes, 5 years younger. Morning, cleanse, vitamin C, sunscreen. Night, cleanse, and a retinol. If you want to apply a moisturizer on top of that, if it's real dry, then feel free to do that. And then once or twice a week, exfoliate your skin. And that's all you have to technically do.
It sounds really easy, but I'm sure I have mostly male listeners, surprisingly. And I'm sure they're listening to this like, I'm not doing all that.
All right. If you're a guy and you want to say you want to limit what you're doing, first thing is definitely use a facial cleanser, not bar soap, because bar soap will definitely dry your skin out. Apply the sunscreen if you're going to be out. If you're not, then at least do a vitamin C serum. And then at night, you just got to apply the retinol. If that's all you do, just, you can skip the exfoliating part of it. That's fine. Just do those things. You don't want to get to that point where you're 50, 60, 70 years old and you go, geez, why didn't I do any of this earlier? Now what am I going to do?
Totally. You got to save your skin. You only get one set of skin.
You do.
Hey, App Fam. Launching my LinkedIn Secrets Masterclass was one of the best decisions that I've ever made for my business. And I didn't have to figure out all the nuts and bolts of creating a website for my course. I needed a lot of different features. I needed a monthly subscription option. I needed chat capabilities in case anybody had questions while they were trying to make their purchase decision. I needed promo code discounts. I needed a laundry list of features to enable what I was envisioning with my course. But here's the thing. All I had to do was literally lift a finger to get it all done. And that's because I used Shopify. Shopify is the easiest way to sell anything, to sell online or in person. It's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And Shopify's not so secret is Shop Pay, which boosts conversions up to 50%. That means way fewer carts get abandoned and way more sales get done. If you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling and strolling. On the web, in your store, in the feed, and everywhere in between. Put simply, Businesses that sell more sell with Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use at Yap Media with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/profiting, and that's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/profiting to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/profiting. So you talk about sunscreen, and sunscreen gets like a lot of hate lately.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, it's a hormone disruptor. We think sunscreen prevents cancer. Now people are saying it causes cancer with its harmful chemicals. It's also people are saying it's the reason for everyone's low vitamin D. So can you talk to us about maybe what kind of sunscreen we should actually look for, and then also like how do you feel about these sunscreen naysayers?
Yeah. So as a plastic surgeon, I can't tell you how many people have come into my office with a tiny little lesion on their face. It ends up being skin cancer. Then they come back to see me. They got a huge hole in their nose, or part of their eyelid is gone, or part of their lip is gone. You do not want a skin cancer on your face, period. And anything that you can do within reason to prevent that, you really want to do, okay? Because it can be absolutely devastating to your appearance. There are certain camps out there that have certain beliefs. And really, let me kind of tell you a more moderate, I think, approach to it, kind of middle of the road approach, is that there's certain ingredients in sunscreens that are considered by some to be hormone disruptors. They are typically oxybenzone and octinoxate. Oxybenzone and octinoxate are the ones that are primarily considered to be hormone disruptors that also may be causing potential damage to the coral reefs. And so if you go to Hawaii, maybe some islands in the Caribbean, they actually won't let you wear certain sunscreens that contain those ingredients because they're concerned about that. So I do recommend in general to avoid those. They're chemical sunscreens. And so there's chemical and there's physical. The chemical sunscreens basically are put onto your skin, they absorb into your skin, and then they create a chemical reaction to help prevent the damage from the UV rays of the sun from damaging your skin. Physical sun blocks are made to sit on the surface of the skin and literally just block the sun's rays from getting to your skin. Those are the ones that are going to be thicker. Back in the day, there were lifeguards that would have look like white paste on the surface of their nose. Zinc oxide, that's the main physical sunscreen ingredient. That's what it is. So there are some people who say, if you're going to wear sunscreen, use a physical blocker. And I think in general, especially for children, that's what I recommend because they're going to physically block the sun and there's no concern about endocrine or hormone disrupting from them. The problem with it is that if you are a person of color, then it can make your skin look ashy. It can make your skin look whitish, give your skin a whitish hue. And so that's not necessarily all that great cosmetically then. And so if you do have darker skin, then and you want to go with the chemical sunscreen, then I recommend ones that have been shown to not be endocrine disruptors, like ones with avobenzone, Megzoral XL. Those are two very popular ones that you can use, I think, very safely. And so that's the way I would look at it is number one, if you want to go out in the sun, you don't want to get burned. You want to try to avoid, obviously, the rays from causing aging of your skin and eventual skin cancer. So definitely protect your skin. With your kids, use a physical blocker with zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. If you can tolerate that and you've got skin color that will tolerate, then by all means use that too. If, however, you want something that's going to feel much lighter on your skin, that's not going to leave that whitish hue, then go with the chemical sunscreens, but pick ones like avobenzone and Megzoral XL and try to stay away from oxybenzone and octinoxate. And then answering your vitamin D question, yes, vitamin D is so essential and there's so many of us who are deficient in it. I myself 100% believe in the therapeutic qualities of the sun. I mean, I live in Detroit for God's sakes. And when we're in the middle of the winter and you get a sunny day, everybody's outside and like, oh my gosh, it feels so good on our skin. Do that. It's fine. Although studies show that if you are Caucasian, you only need 15 minutes a day of direct sunlight to your skin to create enough vitamin D so that you are not vitamin D deficient. However, if you have darker skin, you need more time in the sun to get that. And so I think that there's a happy medium there somewhere. I myself don't wear sunscreen every day. If I'm going to be out a lot, then I will. But if I'm just going in and out from the car and stuff, I don't. And so I think you need to find what you feel is appropriate for yourself and definitely for your family.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. That was like a sunscreen masterclass. So thank you for that. I love to do really like advanced treatments, right? I'm taking my skincare very seriously. And so I used to go to the salon and do radio frequency treatments, and they are phenomenal. Like, I love them so much. I really don't do Botox or anything. Like, I've just been doing radio frequency. And I even have like at-home machines now from this brand Amiro, who I need to get a sponsorship from them because I'm always shouting them out. But they have red light, radio frequency, microcurrent. It's so awesome. And I use them all the time, and it's saved me so much money. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts about using these sort of at-home machines or even getting professional spa treatments to actually build collagen without, I think it's just a little bit more effective than the topical treatments.
Yeah, I think that those are great. And I think that right now we're hitting a renaissance where there's so many at-home devices that can be helpful. I think the first thing, if for your listeners, if you say, hey, what should I start with? The easiest thing is to get a red light therapy, either a mask or a red light therapy handheld or a tabletop device. So red light therapy, we know the idea behind red light therapy is that the energy from that red light gets taken up by the mitochondria of your cells. And mitochondria basically are the powerhouses of our cells. And it causes our cells to create more ATP or more energy. So essentially, the red light energizes your cells to be more youthful. And there are studies that do show, not a lot of studies, but there are studies that do show that using red light therapy can increase the elastin and the collagen content in your skin. So I'm a big fan of red light therapy. I do it myself at home, not as much as I should, just because I always forget, honestly. I do it a lot on my head because I have a laser helmet that I use because my hair, God forbid, was thinning a bit. And so that definitely helps. So the first thing I would recommend would be red light therapy. There are at-home, as you mentioned, radio frequency devices. There are at-home laser hair removal devices and stuff like that. And I think more and more of those are becoming more and more powerful and safer to use. But the first thing I would recommend would be red light therapy, because I think that one, has the most science behind it and probably the most potential benefit. And then if you're going into an office setting, part of the reason why I don't do red light therapy too, in addition to forgetting about doing it, is I do treatments in my office. And those are obviously going to be more powerful than those. And so whether it's, certain chemical peels, one of our most popular treatments is Morpheus 8. That's radio frequency combined with microneedling. And that's a really good skin tightening, non-invasive skin tightening treatment. There's so much out there that's really exciting.
Yeah. Radio frequency to me, I think, is the future. I feel like there's going to be like radio frequency spas that open up. And I just feel like so many people don't know about it. And it's, I think, the fountain of youth, in my opinion. Okay. So you mentioned your hair loss. I recently became single. And so I am of the age where now I'm starting to go on dates with guys that are losing their hair.
It's a sad statement on us.
Yes. And so sometimes I want to and I could tell it's affecting their self-esteem, and I want to whisper just go to Turkey, you're rich. But you actually did not do an invasive treatment. So talk to us, to all the guys out there that are having receding hairline problems, thinning hair. What are some options for them?
So yeah, if you're a male or even if you're a female and you are noticing your hair thinning, there is a very stepwise process I recommend you go through. And I do put that in the Younger for Life book. But the first thing you want to look at is stress. Okay. So stress will make your hair get thin. And the number one thing, then look, are you in a stressful time in your life? And if you are, then that's something you want to deal with. Meditation, yoga, all those things are great. Getting more sleep. Okay. But if you're like, no, I'm actually not stressed, I'm, happy and stress is not an issue for me, then the next thing you want to look at then is nutritional deficiencies. Now, you can see a functional medicine doctor and they can do a ton of labs on you and see where you have a nutritional deficiency, because a lot of nutritional deficiencies can cause thinning hair, whether it's iron, vitamin D, zinc, a lot of different things can contribute to it. Once again, the lazy approach to it, which a lot of people will do, is you get a nutritional supplement like Nutrafol that basically has everything you need. And so Nutrafol, not my company, but they basically have a men's version. They have a premenopausal women's version, a postmenopausal women's version, a vegan women's version, and a postpartum women's version as well. And these are nutritional supplements that basically are all in one. So whatever nutritional deficiency, they'll take care of it. So that would be the next thing I would recommend, was be to getting on a nutritional supplement in case it's deficiency related. The next thing after that is going to be red light therapy or a laser helmet. That's what I use. Typically, you wear those for anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes a few times a week, and that can help. After that, you want to look at topicals, okay? So obviously the most popular topical is going to be minoxidil or Rogaine. There's men's strength and women's strength. Here's a little tip. Women's strength is BS. If you're a woman and you want to use minoxidil and they'll have a men's and women's, they charge more for women's, but it's weaker strength and women can use the men's strength. It's so stupid. So feel free to use the men's version of minoxidil if you're a female and you're thinning your hair. If you don't want to put yourself on a pharmaceutical, which that is a pharmaceutical, basically it's a medication that side effect is growing of the hair, then you can try topical rosemary oil. There's a small study that shows topical rosemary oil may have very similar effects to thinning hair as minoxidil, but with less skin irritation. And so adding a topical like either rosemary oil or minoxidil, definitely recommend. If that's not doing it, you want to give yourself a good 6 months of doing all of those things. If after 6 months you're seeing no change at all, it's not enough of a change, then the next step would be PRP injections, where they draw your blood, they spin out the platelets, which are chock full of growth factors, and then inject it into thin areas of your scalp. That you do need to do a couple of times a year to keep it up, but that can really help as well. That's going to be the stepwise progression that I recommend. Treating your stress, treating your nutritional deficiencies, red light therapy, topicals, and then none of that works, then you may want to go to some injections. And then going to Turkey and getting a hair transplant is way down the list, unless in this situation, Hala, if you've got a bald area, then none of these are going to treat it. It's only for thinning hair. But if you got like in the crown, you got a big bald patch in the crown, then yes, that's going to be hair transplants.
So good. Such good advice. Young and Profiters, when I started this podcast, I had a team of about 20 volunteers for 2 years. At the time, I didn't really have a business. I just had this podcast and I knew how to do every part of the process. So I would just recruit interns and teach them things. Now, fast forward, we're a 7-figure business. We need to hire people that I don't know how to do their jobs, but we're a small company. And so I don't have an HR team. I don't have recruiters that work for me. And we needed secret sauce to get our A players in the door. And that secret sauce is Indeed. Indeed is the world's best matching and hiring platform where you can find, vet, and lock in the best talent all in one place. You no longer need to bounce from job site to job site. Let Indeed do all the heavy lifting for you. Their matching engine can help build your dream team fast. I'm so glad I found Indeed when I did because our hiring now is just so much more effective. We don't have wasted cycles anymore. We find high quality candidates the moment we put up a job post. These people have already basically been vetted by Indeed's matching engine, which, by the way, gets better the more that you use it. And in terms of the quality of the candidates that you'll get with Indeed, a recent survey found that 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. Join the over 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire A players fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to give your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/profiting. Just go to Indeed.com/profiting and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/profiting. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. I'd love to stick on food for a bit. So can you talk to us why it's important to eat a variety of foods?
Well, the number one thing with the variety is going to come with the fruits and vegetables. One of the main agents of our skin, as I mentioned earlier, is free radicals, is oxidation. So the way that happens basically is that because we are alive, our body has a metabolism. It's kind of like a factory that's creating energy, and we've got byproducts of it, like the exhaust from your car. These byproducts are called free radicals, and they can damage the DNA of our cells if they build up to a too large of an extent. So just the fact that we're alive, our body creates, as a consequence of being alive, free radicals, and then our body will actually create antioxidants to neutralize these free radicals. And if you're in a very healthy state, if you're like Dave Asprey, then the amount of antioxidants that your body is creating is probably very similar to the amount of free radicals your body is creating, and you're in a good homeostasis. However, if you're exposed to a lot of pollution, if you're eating a lot of ultra-processed foods, a lot of deep-fried foods and things like that, if you're smoking, then those free radicals can be much greater than the antioxidants that your body is creating, and that creates a state we call oxidative stress, where those free radicals are so numerous that they're now attacking the DNA of your cells. That can lead to premature aging and even potentially cancer down the line. So what, once again, stops those free radicals, neutralizes them, antioxidants. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about skincare, vitamin C, and vitamin C being an antioxidant. Antioxidants are basically in the pigment of the fruits and vegetables that you eat. And so if you eat only, let's say, orange fruits and vegetables, and you only get a certain type of those pigments, a certain type of antioxidants. But if you eat the rainbow of colorful fruits and vegetables, now you're getting a wide variety of those antioxidants, and hopefully a lot of them to neutralize the free radicals and to slow down or stop that premature aging process.
I had a doctor on the show one time, Dr. Gundry, who told everybody to give fruit the boot.
Yes.
And I remember for like 6 months, I didn't eat fruit. And my mom was like getting so mad at me. She's like, eat your fruit. And I was like, yeah, I feel much healthier eating fruit.
Yeah. I mean, the argument is that fruit is filled with fructose, and fructose is a sugar, and sugar is the great ager of our bodies. And so I think, and so I think you take that belief and then you can then project it into, well, then don't eat any fruit at all. But the fact is that there's so much more to fruit than the fructose. There is a ton of fiber, and fiber helps to slow down the digestion of that fruit and the sugar that you get, the sugar spikes and the fructose and all of that. And there's a ton of antioxidants, there are vitamins and minerals, and there are phytonutrients, which are even parts of the fruit that we don't even understand that are so good for our bodies. My dad, he eats a big plate of fruit every morning. He's Korean, he is 83 now. And I swear to God that, you take away some of the physical, movement issues that he may have as he's getting older, but he's going to live to like 100. And part of it is because every day he is infusing his body with these antioxidants, because fruits are filled with antioxidants, as well as vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients, and fiber being so good for our body as well. So I am not one to poo-poo fruit. I'm not a fan of fruit juice and fruit juicing, because now you're taking all that fiber out, and so you are getting the sugar spikes. But if you're eating an apple or an orange or a pear or grapes or berries are great. Those are great fruits that, it just does not make sense to me as a physician that those would be bad for you at all.
I totally agree. I totally agree with you. And how about meats? Like, what is your perspective on meat? Because sometimes I see vegans and they look beautiful.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see vegans and I'm like, you look sick. They actually look sick and tired. So I'd love to get your perspective on that.
So I consider veganism to be more of a moral choice than like a health choice in general, and I admire vegans, I think that their hearts are in the right places. And I have friends of mine who are vegan, and some people really, I think, do great with that. But I think that there are a lot of people, myself included, and I went not vegan, but I went vegetarian for a while. And I found that I feel much better if I have some type of animal protein, getting some type of meat for me. There are different perspectives I think it's important to bring up. I have a good friend of mine, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She wrote a best-selling book about how important protein is to muscles, and how especially women as they get older don't get enough protein, and that can be really harmful to the aging of their bodies. And I do believe that is true. But also when you look at anti-aging scientists, the more protein that you eat, the less typically, the less long you live, essentially, because you are in a state where you're building up muscle, and that's technically not the best thing for overall longevity in the end. And so there are confounding factors here. And so the way I would look at it is, physically, as you get older, you need to have sufficient amounts of protein for your skin, because your skin is filled with collagen, and collagen is a protein, but also for your muscles, because you don't want to have a situation where, let's say you fall, you break your hip, and when you break your hip over the age of 50, there's like a 20 to 30% mortality rate in this first several years afterwards. So as you get older, you want to be strong, and you want to be vibrant, and you want to have strong muscles, because that's going to keep you physically alive longer. But at the same time, you can overdo the protein to an extent where it maybe isn't so good for you, because now you look at longevity genes and what these scientists are looking at. So I think that for me, when I look at protein, I look at getting sufficient amounts of protein so that you feel strong, you feel healthy. Definitely do weight training. Resistance training, I think, is so incredibly important as you get older. But at the same time, choose your sources of protein very wisely. Choose grass-fed beef, pastured pork and chicken. Make sure that you're limiting the amount of these kind of factory factory farm types of meats, and fish that isn't necessarily as good for you.
Yeah. I'm totally agreeing with you on all these fronts. Fermented drinks is something that you bring up in your book, Younger for Life. And I actually eat yogurt every day, and I have since I was younger. And I'm like, maybe that is a factor to why I look so young. But why fermented foods?
So fermented foods are great for the microbiome. So fermented foods are chock full of probiotics, which are beneficial bacteria for your gut. And I mentioned earlier when we talked about gut health and skin health and there being this direct correlation, you can take a daily probiotic, and I do recommend that for everybody. I recommend at least 3 billion colony-forming units a day of a probiotic. But you can ingest that as well with, drinks like kombucha, one of my favorites is kimchi. I'm Korean, so I love kimchi. But eating these kind of fermented foods and drinks, I think, are good because you can really help support the microbiome. And that's something that I think it's interesting, Hala, because 15 years ago, you'd ask doctors, oh, what do you think about the microbiome? And they would poo-poo. Traditional physicians say, oh, that's all hogwash. What are you talking about? And now we know that the microbiome is so incredibly important to the health of our entire body. I'm talking about skin, but our whole body. And so some of the best foods you can eat are fermented foods.
Yeah. I feel like gut health, in the last 10 years has just become so popular and well known and kind of like shaping everything that we do, even like brain health.
Yep.
I talk about it all the time on my show. So like I mentioned, skincare fanatic, Anastasia Fascia Beauty. Have you heard of this girl?
I have, yes.
Girl in her 30s, like we're all obsessed with this girl. She does facial massages where basically she's saying if you do these facial massages, you look young. She's got really good results. Like we're all hooked. I spent $250 on her course. It expired. I never took it. I'll spend another $250 to get that course again because I want to know what she's doing. And I do learn a little bit from her here and there and incorporate it. And she seems really smart. So what is your thoughts around these fascia, I don't even know if I'm saying it right, facial massages?
Yeah. So I think that there's some good and some bad.
Okay.
I think that doing facial massages is good for increasing circulation. It can help to push out fluid and swelling. I think all of those, that is very, very good. But I also think that physically it's not going to change the structure of your face. And so I do question some of the results and whether those are some of the results when I see, and I'm not going to say specifically her, but in general, when I see people say, oh, this is me before face yoga and this is me after, look how snatched my jaw is. Honestly, I can make my jaw look snatched from the side literally by mewing, by lifting my tongue up to the roof of my mouth, take a before and after, and people will be like, oh my gosh, look how amazing that is. But it's like, yeah, I'm just lifting the tongue up to the roof of my mouth. And so I think that there is definitely some short-term benefit for doing facial massage. It's relaxing. Once again, it increases circulation. But when you've seen the actual physical structure of the face like I have, I do a lot of facelifts. I lift the skin up to the face. I see the facial muscles and the fat pads and all that. It makes zero sense to me that by just doing a certain massage on the outside is going to physically change that. It's the same thing when you look at people who have what are called thread lifts, where these threads, barbed sutures are placed under the skin and they claim it's going to lift everything up. And yes, you may get a little temporary result, but it is not powerful enough to actually change the architecture of your face. So for example, some people have a jowl, which is fat that hangs, down over their jawline. And it's a little fat pad. And when I lift up the skin to a face, if I could see that fat pad there. And sometimes what I'll do is I will liposuction part of it away to reduce the size of it. Other people will try to suture it up higher and stuff. But it makes zero sense to me that by massaging it, you could literally physically move it into a different position when there's so many fibrous connections and layers of the face and stuff like that. Unfortunately, there's a lot of information on social media that it sounds too good to be true, but people believe it anyway. I debunked a video recently where somebody said that fillers, and we do fillers, but I'm also one that's, about fillers, but in a very conservative manner, where some guy says, if you get fillers in your lips, it can migrate all the way up to your forehead. And then people have taken it from their forehead and they pushed it back into their lips. And I don't know what he's talking about, but people believe this and it went viral. And so when you and this was just like, think about it. Just take a moment and think, can you actually move something from your lips all the way to your forehead? There's so many different things in the way. It makes no sense. So I think that's where we have to kind of think with the facial massage, is that going to truly get rid of facial fat, like by massaging it? Are you going to cause fat to go away? Are you going to take platysma muscle that has gotten droopy and excessive and make that muscle suddenly shrink down in size? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, when you really think about it, there is some magical thinking, unfortunately, involved with some of these cases.
I don't know. I'm still a believer. She does a good job.
I've seen photos, and like I said, I've seen some of her. I don't want to say anything specifically about her because I don't know her.
Know.
But in general, I think that there's a lot out there where people make these claims. For example, I saw this one video I debunked where a guy had a tattoo on his hand, and I said, "You want to know how to get rid of this tattoo? You take some sugar," and he just got that generic sugar, table sugar. You put that on there. You put a few drops of olive oil, and you rub it. And he rubs it. And he goes for 5 minutes. Then afterwards, tattoo's gone. And he shows no tattoo there. And it went viral. And it makes no sense because that pigment is in the dermis. It's in the deeper part of your skin. And rubbing olive oil and sugar is not going to get rid of that. But people put makeup on over it and they try to, it's silly. So
yeah, there's a lot of BS out there. I agree.
Oh my gosh.
So a couple last questions here on skincare. So Botox, a lot of people now Botox has been going on for so long and people are doing Botox in their 20s, their 30s. I personally feel like Botox can make people look older and that their skin gets very thin looking and their eyebrows start to look very far apart. So I feel like people really overdo it with Botox. However, I'm not a plastic surgeon expert like you. So I'd love to get your perspective on Botox.
So Botox is probably the most popular cosmetic treatment in the history of the world. We do a lot of Botox. The first question people have is it safe? In my practice, we've probably done 20,000 injections. We've never had a major complication from it. So I think it's good, but people can get overdone by Botox. I don't think it's going to thin your skin necessarily, but it can thin the muscles under your skin. Sometimes that's a good thing when people have overgrowth of muscles, like the masseter muscles on the sides of your jaw. You can cause those muscles to atrophy or to get thinner. And some people actually will like that because it can thin the jaw a bit. But I think really in general, it's a paralyzing agent. So it works well for the upper face. So basically crow's feet on up, it can work really well for, but you got to be very careful when you go below because it can also cause your face to not move naturally. And so you really want to use it in a conservative fashion. So I'm a big fan of it. I get Botox myself done occasionally, but definitely it's something where the amount is a big deal.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I've done it a few times. I just feel like the people that do it a lot, it could get a little crazy. How do you feel about jaw filler?
I do a little bit of jaw filler. The issue with jaw filler, so the idea is that if you've got a real narrow jawline, then I think jaw filler can be very helpful for some people to widen their jaw. And sometimes by adding filler there, it can even simulate like your skin's a little bit tighter because it kind of fills the area out a bit. It's not truly a lift as it's more of a filling out. The issue I have with jaw filler and why I encourage people to be very careful with it is because we've got a certain blood vessel called the facial artery that comes along the jawline and basically it goes right underneath the jawline and then it curves up right around where the jowl area is to go basically up to the nasolabial fold or your smile lines up to your nose. And if somebody is not being real careful and they inject filler into that facial artery, you can have major, major problems with what we call vascular occlusion. And that can cause areas of your skin to turn black. It can cause people to even go blind. Rare, but it can happen. So just be very careful with fillers. Botox, worst case scenario, you get a droopy eyelid or something like that. It goes away after 3 or 4 months. Filler, worst case scenario, you can go blind. You can necrose or kill off parts of your lip or your nose. Just be very careful with filler. And make sure it's a hyaluronic acid filler if you get filler. Don't do any of these permanent or semi-permanent fillers. There's no antidotes to those, and they can be very dangerous.
Really, really good tips. Anthony, thank you so much for joining the show. I end my show with 2 questions that I ask all my guests. They don't have to be related to the topic of the show. The first one is, what is one piece of advice our young and profiters can do today to become more profitable tomorrow?
One piece of advice is focus on one thing at a time, get that thing done, and then move on to the next thing. Because once you get that piece of that kind of source of income or whatever done, you're going to start making a profit off of that first, then go to the next thing versus having a bunch of projects that are left undone where you're making nothing off of them.
Love that advice. And what is your secret to profiting in life?
My secret to profiting in life is honestly thinking about other people. Because in the end, if you focus on the needs of other people, it will come back to you sometimes exponentially. So if you only focus on yourself, in the end, you're going to end up alone. And so really focusing on the needs of others, it always works out in the end. I do believe in karma, and I think what you put out there in the universe will come back to you one way or another.
And where can our listeners learn about you and everything that you do?
Well, thank you. Well, I've got my book, Younger for Life, but I've got also my podcast, The Dr. Youn Show, where we cover all these kind of health topics that we've talked about in the podcast today. So those are two great places to find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Hala.